Attention, everybody. The views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliate and subordinate ministries and or nonprofits. So here he is. He's wearing a suit, blue shirt, gold tie. It's a man with a plan to put gold in your hand, Tony Hammock.
Good morning. How's everybody out there in Acts Ministry land? We've got another great morning here in Southwest Missouri. The sun's out, the skies are blue. Hopefully you're going to be able to enjoy it. And if you're not in Southwest Missouri, maybe you should be. Of course, with a mask and all those other things we have to do with our social distancing and so forth. Hopefully everybody in your family is safe and healthy and making it through this in good order and stuff. Got a big show set up here, just a lot of stuff that I thought I would try and cover. Remember last week we talked a little bit about the war on cash, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about Bitcoin and why Bitcoin might be something you'd want to include in your portfolio. As always, we always say Bitcoin's probably not for widows and orphans. It's just really for folks that understand the volatility and the risk, but we'll get into that here in just a little bit. The thing is that so much has changed in just a week. I mean, that's the thing about 2020 is, if you're bored, just wait a few minutes and things will change, either politically or economically or, physically or however else you can change and stuff. I mean, it's just been quite a year. I was on the way in listening to the ESPN Sports Channel, and they were talking about the Lakers winning the NBA championship Sunday night. And I don't know if any of you are sports fans, but it was their 17th championship over the years, and of course they dedicated it to Kobe Bryant, and made me realize that back in the first part of the year when we lost Kobe, it was kind of a sign of what kind of year it was going to be. I can remember my wife that Sunday morning saying, "Hey, Kobe Bryant got in a helicopter accident." And I was just like, who? I just couldn't accept that something had happened to that person. And, obviously he is very missed and so forth. But they dedicated it to him. And then, of course, the rest of the year started to unfold as we got into the month of February. And, of course, March was quite a month for the markets. I think we had the worst month in the history of the stock market in March. And the COVID-19 experience started to unfold. And so now we all wear masks and try to do what we're supposed to and so forth. And hopefully we can keep this awful virus at bay, and they'll find a vaccine between now and the end of the year. I mean, I know that's in my prayers every morning that hopefully we can have one of these companies or a combination of companies come up with something. But, I think what I'll do is let me jump into our stewardship class, just because if we don't, I'll forget. And I don't want to do that because I think this is one of the biggest parts of our show, and that's why I like to include it early and stuff, just because it kind of gets me grounded and everything. But today's is called Give. It says, giving is an issue of honor. Many want to use God for emergencies rather than to honor him for who he is or for what he has already done. Reading, learning, and applying the spiritual principles of tithing and giving will open the storehouses of God's provision in your life. As Proverbs 3:9-10 shows us, there is a return on your investment when you give to God. Honor the Lord from your wealth and from the first of all your produce. So your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. Giving to God first reveals the level at which you honor him in your heart. The tithe tangibly demonstrates that you believe God is your source. Saying that God is your source means nothing. Words alone mean nothing. God doesn't believe you just because you say something. God believes you when he sees that your actions back your words. Tithing is an act of faith, especially when it's given first, before your bills are paid or your entertainment choices are made. God is not asking for a donation when he asks his stewards to give to him. We get it all mixed up when we think that way. God owns it already. God wants you to trust him. He wants you to believe him. He wants you to act in faith. So he gives you an opportunity to do all that through tithes and offerings. And kind of short and sweet, but I think we all got the gist of that one, and we've talked about that a lot on the show over the years. In the fact that it just seems like, I know my own little case, that when I do practice tithing, things seem to go better. They come together better and stuff. When I forget to tithe, or yes, I can forget. I mean, sometimes it's just things start working so well, I forget, and I'm sure there's other folks that are guilty of that. I used to, when I first got in sales all those years ago, I was talking to this one sales manager, and he was talking. I asked him, I said, "Well, what's your biggest challenge?" And he says, "Well, kind of keeping my top salespeople focused. They'll start working on something, and they'll start working so well that after a month or so, they'll change and do something else." And unfortunately, I don't know if that's human nature or what, but that seems to be one of those things that I do, unfortunately. But anyway, I think tithing's important. We've talked about that. Jim Whining, has kind of preached the benefits of tithing when I've had a chance to visit with him. And, if you don't have a ministry that you tithe to, you might look at Acts Ministry and or one of the ministries inside Acts Ministry. I mean, there's several that are just very, very good and doing incredible work. I know that Bruce Pearson, Matt's dad, has one for veterans. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of ministries that would deserve, your attention or tithe and so forth. So if you're at a loss for who or what to tithe to, give that a thought, and come around when we have one of our big festivals, or call in. You can always reach Matt, and if you need to reach me, I'm at 417-755-0700. And you can text me there and or call. Let's do this. Let's get into some pricing, because I got to tell you, the pricing these days is just phenomenal. And if you're kind of listening in and you're wondering, well, what is this guy going off on all these pricing and things like this? This show is dedicated to alternative assets, and it seems like specifically gold and silver, but I mean, there are a plethora of other alternative assets out there. So we try to cover them, kind of based on interest and information and so forth like that. But as of 9:06 this morning, gold was at $1,913.40 an ounce. These are precious metals, by the way, and the prices for them I'm giving are in ounces. Silver is $24.70 an ounce. Platinum is $870 an ounce. Palladium is $2,400. And rhodium is $12,800 an ounce. Hopefully you've got a couple of ounces of rhodium laying around, and can use that if you need to in an emergency and stuff. But all those are precious metals. Gold and silver probably the most popular, followed by platinum and of course palladium and rhodium and stuff. And the last three for sure, well, really all of them in a way, are really used in a lot of different industries. Gold more so for its investment qualities, but it is an interesting metal and gets used in technology quite a bit, as does silver. The base metals, now these prices are going to be by pound. And this first one's the one that's really been intriguing me all year, because I think when the year started, copper was, like $2.50 or something. I mean, I could check here, but copper today is $3.05 a pound. And I mean, there's just a lot of demand for copper starting to creep up around the world. Nickel is up to $6.93 a pound. Aluminum is 83 cents. Zinc is $1.09. Lead's 80 cents. And uranium is down a little bit. It's down to $29.60 a pound. And I know you laugh about uranium. When Asa was here through the summer, we had a lot of laughs at Asa's expense about his interest in uranium. But there are ways to invest in uranium, and there are a lot of folks that think right now, uranium's in what they call a bear market. It's out of favor. It's very much a contrarian play. But when uranium does come back into favor, it has a tendency to reward those investors quite nicely. So something to keep in mind there. Oil. A barrel of crude oil this morning would cost you $40.96. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average, as of 9:08 this morning, was up 98 points. It's at 28,778. The Nasdaq's up 59. It's at 11,923. And the S&P's up 15 points. It's at 3526. So a lot of volatility these days in the markets. And you know, I was telling a client yesterday afternoon. She and I were talking about the pricing of the markets and stuff, and I was telling her, I said, you know, anytime the president can tweet something, and within minutes the market starts to react to a tweet, I think it tells you that this market is rather frothy. It's you know, probably overbought, and there's a lot of speculation going on. Hence the reason why a tweet with no more substance than that behind it would generate, you know, folks making decisions on whether to buy or sell and stuff. So tread lightly, be careful, and you know, we like to encourage folks to have 10 to 15% in gold and silver for a lot of reasons and stuff. But speaking of silver, let me get into some of my new deliveries. I have not one but 3 new coins that I've picked up since last Wednesday, and these are by way of 7K metals. This first one here is the 2020 1-ounce South Korea silver Chiwoo Cheongwang 1 clay. It's 1 ounce of 0.999% purity silver. I know this is probably difficult for you to see, but this was one I received last week, and you know, the art on the Korean coins is just very intriguing, very intricate, and beautiful. Maybe more so than, you know, some of the other ones that we see from time to time and stuff. But that one came through first. Let me see here. We've got a couple others. Oh, I think this might be my favorite new one. Yes, this is my favorite new one. This is the 2020 Silver Eagle, and it's out of the 50 State Series. This is Pennsylvania, State 10 of 50. And I am trying to collect all 50 of those. And I'm imagining if I have all 50 as a set, they will bring quite a nice little return. Let me see. The year of issue on this one is 2020. Country of issue is the USA. U.S. Mint, $1, 1 troy ounce, 0.999 metal purity, fine silver, and there's only 5,500 of them, which might explain something. I don't know if any of you track coins, maybe after tuning into the show for a while, but you know, there is the NGC registry, and they actually have a app you can get on your phone or a website. You can go in and you can actually, you know, enter in the coins you own and kind of keep a inventory or a listing and stuff, and if they know a price, you know, that's kind of out there, especially for collectibles and stuff, they'll put it in there. And what's interesting is for a while when I get these Silver Eagles, I'll take and enter them in, and they'll just go over to the side and they'll put in price guide, you know, like $50. And for some reason, all of a sudden, when I entered this one the other day, it's coming in at $90. Now think about that for a second. Right now, as we speak, gold is at 1,914 on the ask spot, and silver's at $24.65. So silver's at $24.65 an ounce on the ask, and then when you look at a Silver Eagle is $29.66. There's always a little premium between the spot and the cost of the Eagle, mainly because of the printing by the mint and all this kind of stuff. But it's well worth it in most people's minds and so forth. So at $29.66 for a Silver Eagle, and this one's going into the NGC register and saying it's worth $90. So that's not a bad transaction for me. But, it jumped up, quite a bit from 50 to 90 and stuff. And the only thing I can think of is the other day I was looking and it sounded like the mint was going to have to increase the cost of Silver Eagles. And I don't know if that's already being reflected or if just this particular one from Pennsylvania is just that rare or something. But, it's a nice addition to my little collection. It's got a picture of the Liberty Bell up there in the right corner and just a really attractive presentation and so forth. And if you're not familiar with the whole Silver Eagle concept, what we always say is don't make the $1.2 million mistake. And, when we're out in public talking to people, they're like, what? $1.2 million mistake? What are you talking about? And, the Silver Eagle program was started back in 1986 under, I believe it was President Reagan. And they started making Silver Eagles and Gold Eagles. So they're 1 ounce apiece. And, like today, the Gold Eagle is $2,002.09. The silver is $29.66. But the $1.2 million mistake is this. If you had started in the very first month that they were available, adding one Silver Eagle a month to your collection, your portfolio, as of October 1st, 2020, you'd probably have about 415 of these. And your total cost all in would probably be $43,000. Which, when you figure that's spread out over 415 months, it's not that big. It is on an aggregate or a cumulative basis and stuff. But the reason why this is important is if you priced these right now as far as their value, out there in the market, they'd be worth 1.2 million, actually a little bit over 1.2 million, which is hard to imagine. If you had 415 silver dollars, they're worth 1.2 million plus. And, I was skeptical when I first came across that. And being the skeptic I am, I, started researching it and stuff. And sure enough, what's interesting is that you never know which year or which month is going to, benefit the most as far as appreciation and stuff. For example, the coins issued in 1996 are all worth over $6,000. I can't remember what was going on in 96, but why would they be worth over $6,000? And the high water mark is 1999. The 1999 ones are all over $19,000 a piece. Now think about that for a second. If you had 12 of them, just one a month, you were adding them back in 1999, and you had 12 of them, and at $19,000 a piece, you'd have about $228,000 just from those 12 coins of your 1.2 million. And the only thing I can figure is that back in 1999, remember we had the Y2K going on. There was the dot-com bubble in the stock market. It was just kind of a crazy go-go time and stuff. And I just, that must be why. My wife thinks that because of the interesting year we're having here in 2020, that these 2020 Silver Eagles might be worth hanging on to just because of the quality of the or the distinction of the year and so forth. But anyway, since you never know which year or which month or anything that's going to appreciate the most, that's why we just say, why not just get one a month? Just one a month. And if you don't have the discipline to add one a month on your own, 7K and Mint Builder both have coin a month clubs where you can choose which coin you're wanting. Say it's a Silver Eagle. They have Silver Eagle variety coins, and then, of course, they've got their high-end gold coins. But you can get one a month on a systematic basis, and they'll just every month on the day you tell them, the 1st, the 8th, the 15th, the 21st, or the 26th, they'll send them out to you like clockwork, and, of course, they'll charge your credit card. But the benefit to you is like in my case, you might have one that is already showing that it's worth 90. And then last but not least on the coins is I think this one's Michigan. I got one. Yeah, Michigan. And it too, when I listed it in NGC, popped up at a $90 value. So I don't know. There again, I don't know if it's because of this change at the mints, or if there's these two. In fact, let me read the little card that came with it. It says year of issue 2020, USA, U.S. Mint $1, 1 troy ounce. Fine silver, 5,500 of them. Okay, the Wolverine State, home to Motor City because of the rich history of American automobile manufacturing. Michigan is much more than V8 motors and fresh paint. It is the only state that borders 4 of the 5 Great Lakes and also 2 separate landmasses held together by the Mitten. They've got that in quotes. It boasts the most freshwater shoreline of the states and is home to an abundance of wildlife with its rich forestry. So that is already in my little listing at NGC, and it's showing that it's at a $90 value, which is kind of neat. So 3 coins in 1 week. I probably won't have any now for a while because just of the nature of how I've got that set up and everything. But who knows? We'll see. If you get a chance and stuff, you might also start adding some silver if you haven't already. So that might be something to do. Anyway, just a lot of stuff going on out there in the market. And, I've been kind of threatening for some time that we do a show on Bitcoin. And, I'm going to spend a little of this show talking about Bitcoin and stuff. But before I do, let me give you just kind of a taste on why I think Bitcoin is important. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but just so you can kind of understand the impact. What I did was I just did a little back test on a portfolio. And the portfolio is very simplistic. I just basically said, what if you went back to the start of 2017? So you got 17, 18, 19, and up through October 1st. So what, 3 quarters of 2020. And let's just say you put $10,000 in back in January of 17, and you split it 1/3 in gold, 1/3 in silver, and 1/3 in Bitcoin. What would you now have? And I also compared it to the S&P 500 so that we had some kind of a benchmark to kind of measure it by and so forth. And, excuse me. The results were kind of interesting, even to me. But the first one here, what I did is I said, what if we rebalanced that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 on a monthly basis? And what I mean by that is, if during the course of the month, let's say the gold ran up, had one of its stellar months, and at the end of the month, instead of it being 33%, it was actually, 45%. And obviously one of the others would have had to have suffered a little bit or was lower. And so the rebalancing is that, boom, on the first of the next month, we just bring it back down to 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, hence the rebalancing term. And what we do is we sell, in this case, we sell off the gold to bring it to 1/3 of the portfolio, and we take those proceeds and reinvest them in either both of the ones that are lower or the one that's the lowest. So at the end of the transactions, they're back to 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And, the concept of the rebalancing is pretty sound in the fact that it pretty much guarantees you that you're going to be selling something high and buying something lower. And, if you do that over time, and there's a lot of different products that I deal with that have rebalancing available, hence the reason I thought of it. But anyway, so if you'd done that at the end of this little study, your $10,000 in the S&P 500 would have been worth $12,260. Basically a return of about 6.47. Big deal. I mean, that's okay. Don't get me wrong. It's better than losing money. But your portfolio that would have been in the gold, silver, and the Bitcoin would have been $26,236 for a return of 34.55%. So now you can kind of see why I'm intrigued with this addition to a portfolio. The next one I did is the only change is I rebalanced it on a quarterly basis, and the returns jumped up. I mean, the S&P is going to stay the same. It's 10,000, grew to 12,260, so it's still 6.47. But in this quarterly rebalancing, the final balance was 33,329 for a return of 44.83%. So it went up. And then, we went up to semi-annual, and the return ended up at 39,765, or a return of 52.92%. And then last but not least, the final one was, well, what if we just rebalance annually? Just at the end of each year, we bring it back to a third, and the 10,000 would have grown to 52,258 for a return of 66.33. So basically, you can see the trend there. It's almost like the longer the time is between the rebalancing, the better the returns are. And part of that is, in that 4-year time span, Bitcoin had quite a run. But really, I mean, they all have done quite well. And so I thought I was intrigued. I didn't know what the results were going to be and so forth, but now seeing them, I'm thinking that for some investors, it might be something to entertain to bring Bitcoin into their portfolio. As I said at the beginning of the show, I wouldn't do it with widows and orphans and stuff like that. And really, the only money I would put in Bitcoin, just to be very, very cautious, would be money that you could probably afford to lose. I mean, Bitcoin's been out since '09. It really started going in 2011. 2017, at one point, it actually touched 20,000 a coin, and then it quickly corrected back. This year alone, it's gotten as low as, I think, 3,300 at one point. And when I looked this morning, before I came on the show, it was about $11,400 a coin. And so it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, it's something that you would need to understand the risks involved and so forth. But with risks sometimes comes great reward, and you can see this, like in this final one, 10,000 over a 3.5-year time frame grows to 52,258 for a return of 66.33. So not bad. And I will tell you that, in fact, I probably should tell you this. Let me see. Because this will bring home my point as far as the risk. On this portfolio that I created, that let's look at the best one, just because it'll give you the most dramatic numbers. The best year, from 17, 18, 19, and 20 so far, the best year, the return was up 461.94%. The worst year was down negative 29.34%. So, think about that. At the end of a year, one of these years, you were down 29%. So that's why I'm saying there's some volatility and there's some risks. The maximum drawdown is about 32.66%, negative 32.66. In other words, when you look at from the high to the low in one of those years, that's what you saw there. So once again, not something we're going to encourage everybody out there to do with their portfolio, but something that some of you should. And let me get into a little bit of a reading here, because this is the part of the presentation that's going to be focusing on Bitcoin. And I apologize that I'm going to have to read it, but that's probably the best thing, because that way you'll get more accurate information as far as why this is important. The name of this report is called the New Crisis Currency, and it starts out with the world's first digital hard asset. Bitcoin shares Bitcoin shares many of the same attributes of gold that make it attractive as money. It's durable, divisible, convenient, consistent, and has tremendous value as a transfer mechanism that is outside of anyone's control. In this special report, we want to focus on another aspect that makes Bitcoin attractive. It's scarcity. Bitcoin is the world's first scarce digital asset. First, we must understand a few things about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a free market form of money. People all around the world determined that Bitcoin has value to them. They voluntarily chose to exchange other forms of value for Bitcoin. They did not choose Bitcoin because of legal tender laws or because government decrees forced them to, as they do for fiat money. You know, we've talked about fiat before. Fiat money is money that's not backed by anything, like the U.S. dollar right now. In fact, like every currency on the planet, it's just of value because that government, in our case, the U.S. government, has said that it is worth something. There's nothing backing it. The Oxford English Dictionary defines fiat money as an inconvertible paper money made legal tender by a government decree. So the government says, hey, that's worth something, and hence you've got fiat money. Bitcoin is not fiat money. Second, Bitcoin has no central authority. Instead, it runs on a secure, decentralized network scattered around the world on thousands of computers. Bitcoin does not rely on so-called trusted intermediaries or third parties. It has no counterparty risk and no single point of failure. Unbreakable encryption helps secure the network. Now, there's one thing there I kind of want to just take a second and define, because that may not be a term you're familiar with. Counterparty risk. Gold and silver do not have counterparty risk. And what that's all about is, you know, anytime you invest in, let's say, like a stock, you've got the risk that the board of directors or the CEO, you know, some officer at that company could embezzle, they could do bad decisions, they could do a number of things that would have an impact on the price of that stock. So that is your counterparty risk. And as I said, gold and silver and Bitcoin do not have counterparty risk. Think of the Bitcoin blockchain as simply a public database of transactions distributed across thousands of computers. About every 10 minutes, a new block or set of transactions is added to the existing database, which is called the blockchain. And I will tell you this, that is what is the silver lining, so to speak, in this whole cryptocurrency adventure, which is everybody has, or not everybody, but some of these large financial institutions and corporations have discovered that this blockchain technology is very, very important. New Bitcoins are created through what is known as block reward. The block reward consists of two parts. One, transaction fees, and two, block subsidy. The block reward is paid to people who verify new transactions and secure the overall Bitcoin network. It's a crucial part of keeping the Bitcoin network self-sustaining and is what is known as mining. A key feature of the Bitcoin protocol is that the block subsidy gets cut in half roughly every 4 years through a process known as halving. And we just had a halving experience earlier this year. And it's kind of an interesting development. So far, Bitcoin has been through 3 halvings. One in 2012, when the block subsidy dropped from 50 Bitcoins to 25. Another in 2016 when it dropped from 25 to 12.5. And the last one happened in May of this year, as I said, 2020, which brought the block subsidy down to 6.25 new Bitcoins per block. The halvings will continue every 4 years, drastically slowing the rate of increase in the supply of new Bitcoins. By 2024, the block subsidy will be cut to 3.125. By 2028, it will fall to 1.5625. According to the Bitcoin protocol, there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins. That's important here. That's why Bitcoin is unique in the fact that there is a finite number of Bitcoins that will ever be in circulation. Unlike dollars, where, you know, all of a sudden, you know, the government can decide we need another $1 trillion and they start printing money. With Bitcoins, that won't happen. There's 21 million Bitcoins, and several of them have yet to even be mined. As of writing, there are 18.4 million Bitcoins in existence, or about 88% of the total potential supply. So, in other words, you've got, 2.6 million Bitcoins that still have yet to be mined. And so the remaining 12% of new Bitcoins will be added through the block subsidy at an ever-decreasing rate. By the end of the 2020s, the annual growth rate of new Bitcoins relative to the current stock will be close to zero. And as each halving cuts the rate of increase of the new Bitcoin supply in half, the effect on Bitcoin's SF ratio will be drastic. The hardest money the world has ever known. And we're going to get into this SF. S as in Sam, F as in Frank ratio here quickly. The hardest money the world has ever known. Okay? No other cryptocurrency is genuinely scarce and decentralized like Bitcoin. All other cryptos have key players, insiders, and development teams that can potentially act like central banks and increase the supply if they choose to. It's a temptation that humans will likely find impossible to resist. Eventually, it will happen. That is the nature of putting the potential to tinker with monetary policy in the hands of humans. For example, there have been debates within the Ethereum community, the second largest cryptocurrency after Bitcoin, on what the inflation schedule should be. The fact that altering the Ether supply is not only possible but a practical proposal under serious discussion is proof that it is not a hard asset. Bitcoin, on the other hand, takes humans out of the equation. Its non-discretionary monetary policy is in the hands of the unalterable protocol. Bitcoin is the only crypto that is truly non-controlled by anyone. No one can get together and alter its supply, which is fixed for eternity. That's the essential difference between Bitcoin and all other cryptos. It is for this simple reason that no other cryptocurrency and no asset other than gold even comes close to possessing the monetary properties of Bitcoin. Let me read that again. It is for this simple reason that no other cryptocurrency and no asset other than gold even comes close to possessing the monetary properties of Bitcoin. As a free market, non-government, hard money, Bitcoin is in the same league as gold. None of the other cryptos are. Now, let's get into this SF ratio. The stock to flow ratio quantifies the hardness of an asset. The stock part refers to the amount of something available, like current stockpiles. It's the supply already mined. It's available right away. The flow part refers to the new supply added each year from production and other sources. So you take the stock and divide it by the flow, and that gives you the SF ratio, the number of years, which is equal to the number of years of new supply flow needed to equal the current supply of stock. A high SF ratio means that the new supply is small relative to the existing supply. A high SF ratio also indicates a hard asset. A low SF ratio indicates the opposite. A low SF ratio means that the new supply can sway the market balance easily. If an annual supply of something is close to its current stock, the new supply will have a lot of power over the price of that commodity or asset. Today, Bitcoin's SF ratio is around 56, well above silver. Silver's is 4.7, and about equal to gold, which is 58. As Bitcoin's supply growth continues to shrink, Bitcoin's SF ratio will double gold's in less than 4 years and continue growing after that. The SF ratio shows how Bitcoin will soon become the hardest money the world has ever known. And there's a nice chart here that if we had better graphics or visual aids and stuff, I would show you. But basically, it shows the platinum, palladium, silver, Bitcoin, gold, Bitcoin in 2024, and Bitcoin in 2028. And basically, let me read these to you. Platinum is 0.4 on the SF ratio. Palladium is 1.1. Silver is 4.7. Bitcoin here in 2020 is 56. Gold here in 2020 is 58. And then Bitcoin in 2024 is projected to be 120, and Bitcoin in 2028 is projected to be 248. Excuse me. Typically, an increase in demand leads to a rise in price. This incentivizes more production, which creates more supply and eventually downward pressure on prices. But Bitcoin's supply is perfectly inflexible and is entirely resistant to this process. In other words, no matter how high the Bitcoin price goes, it cannot induce the production of more Bitcoins. There is no other asset in existence like this. Now think about that. There's no other asset in existence like this. This is why Bitcoin is the hardest asset the world has ever known. Peak Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the only large tradable asset in the world that has known it has a known and fixed supply. According to the unaltered Bitcoin protocol, we know precisely how Bitcoin's supply will grow. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins, and there's nothing anybody can do to change it. As of writing, there are over 18.4 million Bitcoins in existence, about 88% of the total potential supply. The remaining 2.6 million new Bitcoins will be added at an ever-decreasing rate until the 21 millionth Bitcoin is created in about 120 years from now. By the end of this decade, over 98% of all Bitcoins will have already been created. The supply of Bitcoin won't grow much at all from here, and demand is set to explode. We've already reached what I call peak Bitcoin. Now, hyper-Bitcoinization. Now, there's a word for you. Hyper-Bitcoinization. You heard it here first. The Bitcoin phenomena is the birth of an entirely new form of money. We're talking about the emergence of a new asset that became a significant global money in less than a decade. There is nothing else comparable. Bitcoin is a completely new animal. Bitcoin has gone from having no market value when it was launched in 2009 to being used to purchase 2 pizzas in 2010, the first commercial exchange, to today generating over 50 billion in daily transaction volume from every country in the world. Right now, over 100,000 merchants accept Bitcoin as payment, including Overstock.com, Expedia, Microsoft, and Starbucks. That number is rapidly growing. This is what the process of a new asset becoming money looks like, and it's just getting started. It doesn't happen overnight, but when you take a step back and understand the fundamentals of the long-term trend, the big picture is profound. Today, Bitcoin has grown to have a market capitalization of 186 billion. That's almost 3 times as large as the monetary base of Argentina. If it were a government currency, Bitcoin would be the 35th largest currency. Think of Bitcoin's strict scarcity and shrinking supply growth like a black hole sucking in capital from weaker currencies. Capital is attracted to hard assets, and Bitcoin is the world's hardest. I think this process will not only continue but accelerate exponentially in the years ahead. Some proponents believe the end game for Bitcoin is to eventually emerge as the world's dominant form of money, a process called hyper-Bitcoinization. It's a global voluntary transition from inferior currencies to a superior one. If hyper-Bitcoinization even comes close to happening, the case for which gets stronger every day, it would be the greatest transfer of wealth in human history. You can be on the right side of it by owning some Bitcoin. With that big picture view in mind, I think it's clear we are still in the early days of Bitcoin. In terms of global financial assets, Bitcoin's market cap is barely a blip, as you can see in the following chart. And here again, it's a chart that if we had the graphics ability, I would show you, but I'll just read you the numbers. Bitcoin is at 186 billion. Gold is at 9.9 billion. Global money supply is, 39.806. And global stocks and bonds is at 917 billion. If Bitcoin is going to compete with and eventually overtake government fiat currencies, and I think this is an excellent chance of, and it has an excellent chance of doing that, then its market cap must grow substantially. Now, here's some interesting stuff. Pay attention. If Bitcoin's market cap rises to that of gold's, the price of a single Bitcoin would be worth $428,571. Okay? Now, this morning, it was at about 11.4. So we're talking if it got to be the same market cap as gold, it would go up from 11,400 to 428,571. If hyper Bitcoinization happens and Bitcoin's market cap rises to that of all fiat money, a single Bitcoin would be worth almost $2 million. In fact, 1,904,762 to be exact. And let me take this moment just to stress something on Bitcoin. You know, I'm telling you that this morning it was 11,400, give or take, you know, when I first checked it. You don't have to wait until you got 11,400 to buy a Bitcoin. There's a lot of ways where you can go in and you can buy, you know, $10 worth of Bitcoin. Whatever amount, you know, you want to start with, you can buy a portion of a Bitcoin. You don't have to buy an entire Bitcoin. And that's what's important here is, I mean, can you imagine if you had, let's say, 1% of a Bitcoin while it's at 11,400 and it grew to be 1.9 million? You know, what's 1% of 1.9 million? I mean, that's a lot of money, right? I think that'd be 190,000. Can you imagine having that kind of growth with a 1% of a Bitcoin? But that's what we're talking about. That's why we've been wanting to put this on the show. And you can also see why I've waited a while, just because there's a lot of information and a lot of it's very technical and numbers based. So remember, each Bitcoin can be divided into 100 million units called Satoshis. In the event of a hyper Bitcoinization, each Satoshi would be worth nearly 2 cents. With that perspective in mind, Bitcoin has incredible upside at current prices. Moving towards hyper-Bitcoinization is not as far-fetched as it may seem. Remember, right now, Bitcoin's FS ratio indicates its hardness is roughly equal to that of gold. As Bitcoin's supply growth is continuously decreasing, its hardness will double gold's in less than 4 years and only increase from there. Further, it's clear to me that Bitcoin is a superior form of money to government fiat currencies, which, of course, have no limit on how much can be printed. And Bitcoin's market cap has already surpassed the monetary base of most countries. I think this process will not only continue, but accelerate. That's because governments around the world are printing unprecedented amounts of currency. Bitcoin is the new crisis currency. I've long called Bitcoin the new crisis currency. That's because I recognize that it possesses many of the attributes of a good money and because of its strict scarcity or hardness, as indicated by its high and rising SF ratio. For example, Bitcoin is hugely popular in countries with high rates of inflation, like Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Turkey, and Argentina. That's no coincidence. Bitcoin offers regular people a haven. They can easily use it to send and receive wealth. That might mean paying for goods and services when the local paper money becomes worthless, or discreetly receiving a much-needed influx from relatives who have managed to get out. The person who wrote this says, I spend a lot of time in Argentina and have seen it firsthand. According to a 2018 study, Buenos Aires had the highest Bitcoin adoption rate in South America. And in the midst of the current crisis, Cointelegraph reported in April of 2020 that Bitcoin peer-to-peer trading volume in Argentina, Chile, Venezuela, and Morocco had reached all-time highs. Below is a picture. Argentina is in the middle of a full-blown currency crisis. It's only a matter of time before the local currency collapses. When that happens, I wouldn't be surprised to see Bitcoin absorb a significant portion of the country's monetary base. It certainly has a capability. I expect Bitcoin's market cap will only get bigger for 3 reasons. First, the world is moving towards crisis on multiple fronts. Second, the central banks of the world are going full throttle on money printing. And third, at the same time, Bitcoin's SF ratio roughly doubled after the May 2020 halving and will do so again in 2024. In the months ahead, the demand for Bitcoin has the potential to skyrocket. I want to clarify an important point. While Bitcoin shows great promise, it's still a new technology. It doesn't have a track record that stretches for thousands of years like gold. Bitcoin is a new type of asset that is at the earliest stages of possible monetization. I don't see Bitcoin as a substitute for or competitor to physical gold, nor do I think it's a threat to gold's value proposition. Gold is the best way to preserve wealth over the long term. Instead, I see Bitcoin as a complementary tool for advancing your financial freedom. It's also a great way to speculate on an experiment that could prove to be the hardest money the world has ever known. Further, there is a tendency for people to be attracted to harder money over time. During the financial crisis or when government-issued fiat currency rapidly loses its value, the process is in fast motion. That's when people rush toward harder assets. In a crisis, Bitcoin is invaluable to the common man, and this is why every American should own Bitcoin. And they're basically saying that they think everybody should have at least $100 worth of Bitcoin, which is easy to do. As I said, I know several places where you can buy Bitcoin for less than 100 if you want. I mean, you're just getting a portion of it and stuff. But that is my report on Bitcoin. And I think what you'll find is that's why I've waited so long to do the report. I mean, that was a lot of info. If you're still with me, I give you, applause. But I think we covered some great information there. I mean, we're not going to be talking about Bitcoin on every show. But I think that it's worth noting that, if you can afford it and you don't have Bitcoin, maybe $100 worth would make sense. I'm getting the evil eye from Matt, if that's capable. So, now there's even sound effects. Lots of sound effects. So anyway, that's our show this week, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Jim and Pam and Dr. Paul and all you folks that work with Axe Ministry. And have a great week, a safe week. Wear your mask, follow the rules, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much.